Good evening. My name is Grace Valenzuela. I am the Executive Director for Communications, Family, and Community Partnerships for Portland Public Schools. And welcome to Portland Public Schools Parent University, which is a platform where families can learn and engage with each other on various topics of interest to support our children succeed in an ever-changing world. Parent University is a partnership between Portland Public Schools and parents and caregivers. And by partnering with you, we support our students and families beyond the classroom. We provide workshops and events that we hope will help parents be more knowledgeable, confident, and active as advocate for their children. We want parents to play a huge part in the transformation of our schools and neighborhoods as we move forward together. Portland University is intentionally aligned with Portland Promise, a district strategic plan for improving the preparation, empowerment, and outcomes for our students. Centered on the goals of equity, the Portland Promise seeks to advance the goals under student achievement, whole student development, and the support for people, the Portland Public Schools staff. Tonight's hot topic is on digital devices that occupy most of our time that may not necessarily be balanced and appropriate, particularly for young children. We will explore strategies to build a culture of healthy, mindful tech use at home. To lead this workshop is Courtney Graffius, our PPS Technology Integration Coordinator. She coordinates software selection and supports implementation. She also leads the district's computer science and digital literacy instruction vision work. She is a Common Sense Media certified educator. Courtney is passionate about using technology in ways that improve the human experience. Her collaborators are Kate Meyer and Jonathan Werner. Kate teaches English and design thinking at Mount Desert Island High School in Bar Harbor, and was previously a Maine Learning Technology Initiative ambassador. Jonathan Werner is also a former MLTI, Maine Learning Technology Initiative ambassador, and is now the MLTI Ambassador Program Facilitator. He worked previously as a tech integrator at Cape Elizabeth Middle School, where he supported digital citizenship education. Both are Common Sense Education ambassadors. For how we're going to do the sessions today, so the presenters will do a slide presentation and we will have a question and answer period after their session. Please use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen to type in your questions and comments. We will also post a link to the feedback form about the session. Your feedback is important to us. It helps us in planning workshop sessions of interest to you. So without further ado, I am going to turn the floor to Courtney, Kate.
Great. Thanks, Grace.
Jonathan.
Thank you so much. In the chat, I added the feedback form and we'll add that again at the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for joining us this evening and taking the time to attend this presentation on digital citizenship, which is a topic of our time and has widespread implications. We know that navigating devices with our children is a process and that there is not a playbook for it. In the Portland Public Schools, our librarians and teachers have been teaching digital citizenship in elementary, middle, and high schools. Additionally, Jonathan Werner, presenting with us tonight, is working with 2 focus groups related to this topic. You can be on the lookout for additional communication and/or outreach events on this topic from your school as we move on in the year. In many cases, this will come from a school librarian, a Common Sense certified educator. On this slide, you see a ripple, a raindrop. The collaboration between families, staffs, and students and community is like a ripple effect in a wave. There's a central impact that continuously affects the surrounding areas with a 360-degree range, hitting from all angles. In this instance, the ripples start with you, the families and caregivers of the children, so that you are able to assist with guidance. The next ripple is one that has already started and is being led by our librarians and teachers, where staff and students in the district learn knowledge, resources, and strategies related to digital citizenship. And then finally, as the ripples spread out, they just become a natural part of the community culture. To create a positive culture around media and technology, Common Sense Education advocates for a whole community approach by including a strong family education component. This comes from the Teaching Digital Citizens in Today's World research and insights behind the Common Sense Digital Citizenship curriculum from 2021.
Courtney, thank you so much. I really appreciate the introduction and so glad to be here this evening. We wanted to begin by letting you know that Kate is zooming in, as we said, from MDI, where we did this work with communities there last year. And this year we're working with Portland. I am in Stroudwater, right nearby, and I'm really looking forward to being able to do some in-person collaborations, as Courtney mentioned, with staff and students, and get a sense of how I can best support this continued growth. But as she said, really beginning with families is key. And so we really appreciate all of you taking the time to be here this evening. The issues we're going to be talking about are ones that Kate and I are quite passionate about, and we truly appreciate the chance to get to talk with so many of you about them. To get us started, I wanted to share this digital postcard and say a bit about Kevin Honeycutt and his work with kids and technology. Kevin's a mentor to me and a wonderful advocate for thoughtfully using tech in education. But I'm starting with him this evening because I love his attitude about presenting. He begins all of his excellent talks with something he calls SIDKY, or something I didn't know yesterday. Kevin's intent in doing so is to remind audiences that he is an expert, but not the expert on whatever issue it is he's discussing. In his book and podcast, Your Digital Dad, Kevin emphasizes that he's always learning more and is sharing what he learns, while also acknowledging those areas where he's not yet comfortable with being the authority. To that end, Kate and I wanted to begin with a similar reminder for all of you. We know quite a bit about this subject, and we've done a lot of work in this area, but we are not the authorities. And especially if something we say triggers your spidey sense, absolutely follow your gut. We may know digital citizenship, but you are the experts on your kids. Likewise, while we can hope our talk is thought-provoking, we want to expressly state before we even begin that we cannot provide definitive answers. And though we certainly wish we could, we have no magic wands to wave that will make this complicated issue disappear. So, what did I learn yesterday? I already knew about Frances Haugen. She was the Facebook whistleblower who riveted Congress and the public with her honest descriptions of the alarming decisions that impact our kids, which are made regularly within Facebook's corporate structure. I also knew that since testifying, Haugen has been instrumental in launching Issue One's newest project, the Council for Responsible Social Media. What I did not know was that the council is comprised of an incredibly diverse group of people that Haugen has recruited to join her. Most notable to me was the broad spectrum of political and personal backgrounds among the members, and perhaps most exciting, the presence of influential young stakeholders like Dr. Joel Burville. Dr. Burville has made it his business to fight the spread of medical disinformation, especially as it pertains to people of color. He is brilliantly utilizing the power of social media to reach young people across the country, and his nearly 637,000 TikTok followers and over 18.8 million TikTok likes are proof of the good that emerges when digital citizens take the next step and become digital leaders. Here are two examples of the kinds of posts you might find in his feed. First, he expresses amazement at how much influence he's been able to have in the area of medical health equity for people of color. He's genuinely astounded by how quickly his message has spread and how many people are hearing his voice. But of course, that's exactly the kind of magic social media can work when it's used for good. In the second post, Burville capitalizes on the way Generation Z is using social media to amplify messages. In this short clip, he's responding to the news that one of his followers had what they thought was a mole checked, and by detecting it early, prevented what was actually melanoma from spreading. Burville's celebration perfectly captures the joy of this discovery in a way his audiences can relate to. Both he and his viewers now know that his work is not only making a substantive difference in his followers' lives, it is quite literally saving them. Dr. Burville's use of tech to pursue his mission is precisely the kind of digital leadership we'll be talking further about this evening. And the attention Burville's work has garnered is a great reminder of just how much our kids and Generation Z as a whole stands to gain if we can help them better understand both their responsibilities and their power when they too use tech to make a difference. As Kate and I continue to address questions about kids and tech use, we find ourselves returning to several core beliefs that govern all the work we do, especially when that work pertains to how kids interact with social media. First, the support that we offer kids for navigating their online lives must be grounded in empathy and must stay focused on helping kids utilize technology in more effective and mindful ways. For us, that empathetic focus is closely paired with the idea of empowerment. That is, not trying to control our kids, which we know is impossible, but instead working to give them a sense of authentic agency. Within those two larger themes, we hope to eliminate the temptation of othering our kids, of thinking of them as different from us, when we know that our work is, in fact, a shared mission about a shared experience. In that same vein, the work of digital citizenship and digital leadership cannot be exclusively teacher-led. As we'll discuss, we need the support of every adult our kids interact with, of all the players whose decisions impact kids' lives, to make this a shared responsibility if we're going to be effective as changemakers. We also feel that any model that addresses missteps or unacceptable behavior in the realm of tech or misuse of tech must employ a supportive and not a punitive model. As we also talked about, we firmly believe that real change also requires community support in every sense of that word, and that we cannot rely on a school-only model which ends when the bell rings. And finally, we think it's critical to reframe our thinking about our role as adults in our kids' lives, moving away from the misnomer of experts and toward the concept of co-learners who explore alongside our kids. So, how do we see those core beliefs translating into our work for this evening? We're going to start by re-examining our perception of how Generation Z experiences technology. Specifically, we want to focus on understanding the internal experiences of Gen Z as they encounter, incorporate, and inhabit their world online. Second, we'll try to help rethink our assumptions about why Gen Z continues to struggle. We know Gen Z is being actively and unconscionably manipulated by big tech, so we'll next turn to understand those external forces that are at work in our kids' lives. And finally, we hope to reconsider our role in supporting kids' healthy tech use. It is tempting to emphasize the digital no's and the digital don'ts, the dangers of tech overuse and misuse, but we think the alternative, an emphasis on digital leadership and on the digital do's, offers the most promising path forward as we navigate this uncharted and constantly shifting landscape with our kids.
As Jonathan and I were planning this presentation, we kept coming back to the idea that our kids and we ourselves are stuck in a technology wilderness. As we talked more about it, we realized that this metaphor can help us understand not only the digital landscape that they face, but also how we might help guide them through it and the role that the whole community plays in this adventure. So let's begin tonight with our hikers, Generation Z. But before we dive into who they are, let's pause for a minute and remind ourselves that the us versus them is an age-old trope when it comes to generations. We need to shift our paradigm of shaming younger generations to empathizing with them. We can't impose our lens on their world. We actually have to look through a different lens. It is important to understand our place and time and how both of those things impact how we exist in the world. Generations are one way to group age cohorts. The term generation typically refers to groups of people born over a 15 to 25-year span. According to Pew Research, an individual's age is one of the most common predictors of differences in attitudes and behaviors. Age cohorts then give researchers a tool to analyze changes in views over time. They can provide a way to understand how different formative experiences interact to shape people's views of the world. So Generation Z, also known as iGen, the post-millennials, or even the Zoomers, is the youngest, most ethnically diverse, and largest generation in American history, comprising 27% of the U.S. population. Pew Research recently defined Generation Z as everybody born after 1996. Members of Gen Z have little or no memory of the world as it existed before smartphones. They are growing up with technology, the internet, and social media, which sometimes causes them to be stereotyped as tech addicted and antisocial. The average Gen Z member got their first smartphone just before their 12th birthday. They communicate primarily through social media and text and spend as much time on their phones as older generations do watching television. Our newest generational cohort, Generation Alpha, it's everybody born in or after 2013, is about to join us in this technology-infused world. It is fitting that this cohort's first defining moment is the launch of the iPad. Tech-savvy Gen Alpha will experience a digital social world. As electronic devices become common toys for children, they are increasingly an important part of the way they socialize. Connected by apps and games, friendships in Gen Alpha won't be limited to the playground. Of course, these changes introduce challenges to parents of Gen Alpha. Growing up with technology prepares kids for the digital opportunities of the future, but parents need to know how to manage the risks. Cyberbullying, for example, now represents a quarter of all reports of bullying in schools. So the online world must be managed carefully. Even though I'm old enough to be a member of a parent of Gen Z, I find myself able to relate to their connection to technology. I'm part of a little micro generation between Gen X and the millennials, usually called the Zennial generation, but I happen to prefer the Oregon Trail generation. The internet became a household phenomenon when we were in our early teens, the perfect age to be able to dig into technology and really explore it and understand it because we weren't burdened with careers and families. We had the time to adopt digital technology in a way that no other generation had the luxury of experiencing. And we existed in two worlds. We had an analog childhood and an increasingly digital young adulthood. Because of this, while I love digital technology and all we can do with it and all it can do for us, I also very clearly remember what it was like to be 15 and handed unfettered access to the internet. And so I have concerns, and I have a deep sense of responsibility to help lead Gen Z and Gen Alpha through this digital world. Unlike my generation, who had time to explore the newly emerging digital world, Gen Z and Gen Alpha are born into a world replete with digital technology. Pew Research notes that they are on the leading edge of entertainment media use. That's what we call social media, which is, again, mainly how they engage with digital tools. However, unlike my generation, they view their world as existing in a space where they move seamlessly between the physical world and the digital world. Some adults might view these two spaces as real and fake. Gen Z and Gen Alpha see them not only as equal, but as indistinct from one another. Let's pause for a second and think about the implications that this has for our younger generations. They see these worlds not only as equal, but as indistinct from one another. And they're not just on TikTok doing silly dances. The New York Times recently reported that Gen Z users have begun replacing Google searches with TikTok as their primary search engine, which is a very serious issue, as at least 1 in 5 search results on TikTok results in sources that contain misinformation. And they're not the only ones who have relied on misinformation. In 2001, Mark Prinsky wrote an article titled Digital Natives, Digital Immigrants. It was published at almost exactly the same time that my school was moving to one-to-one laptops. In fact, some of you might have been those students in our classrooms. Teachers grasped onto this theory of digital natives that was about our learners as new tech was being introduced into our classrooms. It gave us comfort to know that our kids were just naturally digital natives. We were presented with the idea of, rather than simply being a new generation of learners, they were a whole new mysterious species who were natural users of technology and felt comfortable with it. They were the natives, and the older generations were the immigrants who simply did not know how to speak the language of digital technology. Also, we were told that they just knew how to use technology, so we could hand it to them and they could just pick it up and go. And we were told that they had brains that were wired differently than ours, with an inclination toward just innately understanding how technology works. Now, 20 years later, new data has emerged that challenges our assumptions about digital natives. Further study shows that the differences in how people engage with digital technology is more of a predictor of people being digital natives than simply the generation to which they belong. Digital natives are not a product of generational cohorts, and by saying that they are, we're really creating a false divide. Adults and young people can speak the same language of technology and develop the same skills. So we should not lean on this misleading definition of the digital native. Doing so, just as we did in 2001, virtually guarantees that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are left without the support they need when it comes to navigating the risks of the internet and digital technology. And really, if digital natives were real, we would not be having this conversation. They'd be fine. They'd naturally understand how to see scams and bad actors. They would know how to stop cyberbullies and how to use digital tools to advance issues that are important to them. While our kids inhabit a digital world, they're not as natural at navigating it as we were first led to believe. And we need not look too far to discover the negative impacts of Gen Z's social media use. The Center for Generational Kinetics conducted a study that gives us these statistics. Gen Z reports that there is a detrimental connection between their social media use and their mental health. From their personal happiness to their self-esteem, they are reporting that it is all under fire. It is our responsibility to join together and empower them while they develop their skills in order to be able to navigate this digital world that they live in with a sense of confidence and empowerment. And as our collective attention is about to turn to the experiences of Gen Alpha, our newly emerging cohort, we suspect that these trends will only become more important to study further. And studying the generation ahead of them is the best way to predict trends that Gen Alpha will likely face as they begin to join us online. As Jonathan and I continued to talk about this, we increasingly came to see the digital world that Gen Z inhabits as a digital wilderness. This is where teenagers who are between the ages of 13 and 18 spend 9 hours a day consuming entertainment media, and where tweens who are between the ages of 8 and 12 spend an average of 6 hours a day. And that is not including time spent using media for school or homework. And this is up 17% since the start of the pandemic. That's more time online in the digital wilderness than they spend with parents, teachers, or other adults. And that's with access to the world's information. Our kids are going to have to navigate this wilderness in real time as it expands around them, which means that they will be left to their own devices at some point to make decisions about their use of technology. We cannot justify leaving them in this digital wilderness where their devices are controlling them, leading to both a lack of agency and disempowerment. Abandonment in the digital wilderness is not an acceptable approach. The worst thing we can all be doing is nothing. Yet, there is a way out, and it is our job to help them navigate this wilderness safely. Jonathan would be the first to say that no amount of analysis or data or even boundless empathy for teens' experiences can replace hearing directly from Gen Z about what it is like for them to be left to fend for themselves. So as you watch this short video we're about to show you and hear about the wilderness directly from our hikers, we'd like you to think about how these stories resonate with you in terms of their ability to capture the experiences of your own children, yourself, and your peers. You may also notice that She Knows, the organization that created this video, has worked for several years with these participants. And so we'll get to see flashbacks and present day interviews as they've grown up in the digital wilderness.
Do you feel addicted to technology?
Yeah.
I could stop if I wanted to, but I don't want to. I use my phone 4 hours a day, and Hulu and Instagram are my top used apps, and my mother is gonna kill me.
This week was 5 hours.
I use my phone for 6 hours a day.
On an average per day on like a weekend, I'd spend 2 hours on my iPad and 3 hours on VR. I play video games, I watch YouTube.
Weekly total is 45 hours and 26 minutes.
44 hours and 3 minutes.
52 hours and 20 minutes. And my most used apps are TikTok and YouTube.
How long on TikTok?
16 hours and 20 minutes, and on YouTube 6 hours and 30 minutes. It's so addictive.
I would say I'm very addicted to VR. I mean, it's a very addicting thing. I talk about it like 24/7.
I've had one of those nights where I'm just like, I need my phone. I need it, I need it, I need it. So I constructed myself this. It's my fake phone. It only has one app, and the app is Grey's Anatomy. So I've just been watching a bunch of Grey's Anatomy on my phone.
I needed my phone to make me feel better just for a minute.
I go down the YouTube rabbit hole a lot, where you just like video and video and video. I don't stay away from it, I embrace it.
I'll just like find myself spending more and more time on TikTok, usually at like 2 a.m.
There's no other way to like entertain myself. Like if I'm bored, then it's just like, oh, well, my phone's there, so.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't be able to talk to anyone if I didn't have Snapchat. I'd feel completely isolated.
What people put on their Instagrams isn't like their everyday life. It's like the highlights of their lives. It's the sort of best parts. And when we try to make their highlights our whole lives, it gets kind of like obsessive.
I feel like the amount of likes you get kind of ends up validating whether or not it's a good photo or I looked pretty in the photo.
Other people liking it is like, okay, they like me. I'm okay, I'm good.
I value likes in the same way I like getting compliments. Nobody doesn't want a compliment.
I use my phone a lot as a stress relief because there are a lot of things I have going on in my life.
I don't have to worry about if my friends like or do not like the posts and the social stress that I get.
What's addictive about Instagram is, just it's an endless bowl of soup. You keep going, you keep scrolling.
I feel like I wouldn't have any friends if I didn't have my phone.
If nobody else had a phone either, I don't think it would be much of an issue for me. But it's the idea of like me being the only one without social media or me being the only one without a phone and feeling like I'm the weird one.
I'd say that the only real problem is Netflix. But after a week, I've gotten used to not being able to watch it. But I am exercising my restraint, and I guess that's good for me.
I also put a cap on my social media. I thought would be fun, shake things up, so I can only be on Instagram for 1 hour a day. Do this to myself.
Yeah, having social media definitely made me feel bad. I feel like living in a non-digital world is like a lot better than like scouting like your life for like pictures.
As high as some of those numbers may have seemed, remember that 45, 50, even 55 hours a week of usage that those kids were self-reporting came prior to the 17% post-COVID spike that Kate alluded to earlier. That's a lot of time that they're spending on screens. And as we said, we wanted to start today by looking at that internal experience of Gen Z. But if we can also help our kids identify and name some of the external forces that are at work, we may begin to better understand the why behind our experience with technology and theirs as well. Too often, we overlook or just miss that the interactions we have with our devices are in fact meticulously crafted experiences engineered by profit-driven equations. As Tristan Harris, a former Google employee who went on to found the Center for Humane Technology, reminds us, every time we interact with a device, we're engaging in a battle with a room full of people somewhere who are pulling out all the stops to keep us focused on them and their product. Every major app and digital product company has one or more of these teams in one or more of these rooms, and each is tasked with the same thing, crafting the most minute details of the digital wilderness that permeates Gen Z's lives. These teams, they're not really crews. Maybe they're more like grooves and perhaps minions, who are working in their digital sub-basements to develop a landscape that is anything but organically evolved. This is a wilderness of their design, a carefully crafted world in which every rock, tree, and leaf is strategically placed in front of the consumer by big business, a wilderness in which every second of attention paid to our devices translates into dollars paid to the companies. At the granular level of a single individual on a specific day at a particular hour, algorithms and code conspire to place the perfect traps in front of each user. Unfortunately, we, and even more so our kids, mistake these traps for safe, well-marked paths, and we happily plunge into the trees. Wrongly assuming a friendly trail crew has paved the way, we fail to realize that the signs and blazes all point one way, toward the bottom line. Adam Alter, author of Irresistible, The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked, describes big tech's manipulation as a kind of weaponization of apps and games. As he explains, the designers run thousands of tests with millions of users to learn which tweaks work and which ones don't, which background colors, fonts, and audio tones maximize engagement and minimize frustration. As an experience evolves, it becomes an irresistible, even weaponized version of the experience it once was. In case what I'm describing sounds like hyperbole, we wanted to share a few specific examples that we hope illustrate this point and which may make for a good discussion topic as you continue to have these conversations with your own kids. First, we have physiological manipulation. This first image, shared by a young man online, shows him winning Fortnite with what the game calls Victory Royale. Now, take a look at his heart rate. It's 167 beats per minute now, and it was 174 beats per minute just a minute ago. And this is happening while this young man is sitting still. I do not encourage you to try this at home, but I thought I'd see what it looked like to get on my treadmill to get to 174 beats per minute. Let's just say it was not particularly pretty. The room full of manipulators at Fortnite headquarters has so perfected their algorithm that they can replicate my near-death experience exercising by simply writing code that elicits the same response for the gamer. That young man sharing his photo thinks it's funny and cool, but if you step back for a moment and look at what's happening, I think you'll agree it's actually fairly terrifying. Let's talk for a moment about the manipulation that occurs through gamification of social media. Like millions of peers, the young woman in this photo is sharing the exciting news that her ceiling fan is still spinning. I've seen snaps of socks, lamps, pillows, carpet, all of the content even more riveting than the content before. So why are they snapping it at all? If you've talked to any Snapchat user, you'll know the answer is streaks. And to keep these streaks going, kids all too frequently abandon their better judgment. They hand their devices and passwords over to friends, only to discover that that decision may have had very negative consequences. Social media's gamification, especially its use of streaks and likes, plays on the exact same human tendency that keeps gamblers pulling the arm of a slot machine, a phenomenon called intermittent variable rewards. Did you know that Facebook began without likes or reactions of any kind? But those rooms full of people vying for our attention, they realized that gamifying the app would increase usership, drastically increase usership, and the length of time the user was engaged. So Instagram and TikTok, as shown here, Snapchat, quickly followed. But as I said, the dopamine hits from intermittent variable rewards and from gamified social media leave our kids without access to their better judgment. They abandon their common sense because big tech has rewarded their lizard brains for doing so, for valuing the streaks and the likes over their privacy, their homework, over their sleep, and all too often, over their mental health. And despite the fact that the news is filled with stories from whistleblowers like Frances Haugen for Facebook, we nonetheless forget in the moment that we're being manipulated. So let's look at one very specific example and one that your kids might find particularly engaging to talk about. The publicly stated mission of TikTok is to inspire creativity and bring joy. To that, I say, baloney. TikTok's internal memo from 2021 overtly stated that the mission of the company is to increase DAU, or daily active users. The leaked memo went on to provide details about the app's algorithm, which is shown here on the left, a carefully crafted equation that so perfectly creates the feed of each individual subscriber that, as many users have confessed, I'm pretty sure that the TikTok algorithm knows me better than I know myself. As Kate said, with Gen Z increasingly using TikTok as their search engine, looking to the platform for facts and truth, we need to be arming our kids with some healthy skepticism about the answers that emerge as they conduct these profit-driven searches for content that is itself crafted to make a profit. It is no surprise if we think about it in the abstract that big tech is driven by its bottom line. But particularly for Gen Z and now for Gen Alpha, it's really easy to lose track of this fact in the moment when we're in the thrall of big tech. Fortunately, this naked greed and the corporate agenda has given rise to some pretty powerful watchdogs, people who are mindful of the stakes and who aren't willing to let kids be targeted. And these good guys are the ones we have to thank for the concept of digital citizenship. Of the many watchdogs Kate and I have researched and reviewed, we're particularly inspired by the work of George Couros and his definition of digital citizenship. While there are many competing definitions out there, Couros describes it as using the internet and social media in a responsible and ethical way. But what we found particularly appealing about Couros' definition was how it dovetailed with his description of digital leadership. Digital leadership, he says, is using the internet and social media to improve the lives, well-being, and circumstances of others. To quote Couros, these two-pronged approaches shifts our focus from the negative connotations around technology to shining a light on how it can empower kids to be digital leaders. Or, to put it another way, pairing digital citizenship with digital leadership allows us to move away from focusing on just the digital don'ts and instead emphasizing for our kids the digital do's. Moreover, Couros suggests that the journey toward leadership from citizenship has a readily identified and highly effective starting point. Our kids are all future Dr. Burvals, the TikTok medical disinformation specialist, and Couros has found that if we can help Gen Z and Gen Alpha articulate issues they're passionate about, we can help them focus their energy online to using digital tools to make positive change. For younger kids, and any kids for that matter, this shift can also focus on moving from consumption to creation. That is, from just looking at their device to using those devices to be inventive, to write, to code, to draw, to plan, and to make. As you're helping to support your kids move toward leadership and towards digital creation, talking with them about how they're interacting with their devices can be incredibly powerful. We've put together just a few starting points for dinner table or car on the way to practice conversations that can help illuminate some of the areas of potential growth. The first category for these mini discussions falls under the heading of behavioral architecture, which is often defined as the choices you make in the present to influence the behavior of your future self. The Post-it that you have on the fridge reminding you to drink water instead of soda, that is behavioral architecture. In the context of tech use, we might encourage kids to talk to them about push notifications and how those are really powerful in motivating their behavior and why not having them can be a real game changer in their lives. Have them ask themselves, is this a person I know that's notifying me? And if not, turn the notification off. Whenever you install a new app, opting for not allowing those notifications so that that's the new default. Charging phones downstairs and using instead an alarm clock so it's not next to their bed. Organizing and participating in screen-free events, things like tech Sabbaths, where you take a full day off, or creating consistent rules for all family members so that everyone is doing the same thing. As you think about this, that kind of consistency and having the conversations really can be transformative. And it's as simple as instructing your future self to do something a little bit different. A second category of conversation involves interrogating the features of any particular app or something that they're working with. And as they do that, thinking about things like the typing awareness indicator. It is not there for the purpose of telling you someone is typing. It is there to keep you looking at your device for more time. Have them look at which apps get rid of their clock. For example, in this case, on the left-hand side, you see the Games app from the New York Times, and on the right-hand side, a seemingly very similar Sudoku app. But the phone has deleted the clock from the upper left-hand corner. That is a programmer deciding that they want you to get lost inside the program, and as a result, making it so that the clock is not visible. Another question to have them ask is simply, is this particular feature humane or addictive? Is it coded to improve the quality of my life, or is it coded to improve the company's bottom line? Getting kids to think about that can be a really, really powerful starting point for the conversation. And whatever you focus on as you talk about this with your kids, remind yourself that the more frequently kids are pausing to talk about their devices instead of using those devices, the more their awareness is going to become automatic. It's going to become a response that they have when they open their device, and they get more thoughtful about it. And that makes them more intentional, more creative, and more positive. So the subject of the conversations really isn't the point. As with any effort we make to change the behavior, the more places and times and contexts where they're having the conversations, the more likely that the message is going to stick.
So if we are right that supporting digital leadership is the way forward, we already have one group of skilled people in place to support our kids. Enter your district's educators, the Maine Guides. These guides are your district's educational experts. They are on the front line of the digital wilderness, leading your hikers through their adventures. They spend hours upon hours honing their craft and keeping up with current research and trends, including best practices when it comes to how to navigate this digital wilderness. While these guides are the educational experts, they need you as partners, the experts on your children. Anything educators are doing will be even more effective if kids are hearing consistent messages about these challenges at home and at school. Jonathan has already spoken to your children's librarians about some of the great resources that are available to support this work, but we want to begin by introducing those resources to you, too. So just before we go forward, all of the resources that I'm going to go through here for the next few minutes are linked on these slides, and we will put the slide link information in the chat for you again as we near the end of our presentation, so you don't have to worry about tracking these resources down. Common Sense Media, the sister organization to Common Sense Education, which is the organization for educators, offers a wealth of resources just for parents. Their media list recommendations for families can help you get age-appropriate ideas for movies, TV, streaming, games, apps, books, and more. You can filter the recommendations by age to help you find the best media for your children. They also have a video library of parenting tips. On this page, you will find a library of videos that will help you navigate topics like how to handle cyberbullying, how to deal with gaming, news media, online safety, parental controls, and more. And if you prefer articles, they have a curated collection on the same topics. Read articles on screen time, school technology, social media, and get up-to-date recommendations for how to navigate it all. And finally, one of our favorite resources for parents, the Family Tech Planners. The family tech planners provide age-appropriate planners to support you and your family to have those meaningful conversations about tech use as a family. These planners will guide your conversations and provide space for you and your family to make plans in writing that you all agree to. Be on the lookout for communication from your school's librarians regarding a workshop at your school to help you create your own family tech plan.
I mentioned those dinner table conversations that can be so helpful, and Common Sense Education, in conjunction with Common Sense Media, gives parents some really impressive resources to help you initiate and structure these discussions with your kids. The packets are organized by grade level, and I'll just take a moment to show you the grade 6 through 8 packet to give you a sense of what these contain. In the self-management conversation starter, one of 5 starters for this grade span, Common Sense Education focuses on every family member's digital habits. Research has repeatedly demonstrated that nothing is a more powerful influence on kids' tech use than what is modeled by their families. So, what if everyone's phone got charged in the kitchen? Or what would it look like if no one got to use their devices at meals? The Common Sense Education conversation starters are framed to help families spark discussions precisely on these kinds of issues. They also frame them as mindsets, what they call dispositions, and we're asking students to engage with these mindsets when we talk to them about digital citizenship topics. We ask them to slow down and self-reflect, to explore perspectives with curiosity and with empathy, to seek facts and evaluate evidence, to envision options and impacts, and to take action and responsibility, and as we said, behave as digital leaders. These are not just mindsets, but life skills that we want to help them develop. And again, if they're getting these same messages at home and at school about these concepts, the likelihood of success skyrockets. Neither family nor school alone is going to be successful in moving this needle. It really does need to be a collaboration. So before we wrap up, let's take one more look at these core beliefs and ask yourself, as you think about how you approach them with your kids, is my approach to tech use, both for myself and for my kids, guided by being supportive, by acting as co-learners, by demonstrating empathy for their experiences and your own, by acting as a community, by removing any sense that this is an us versus them, and by sharing responsibility for the work? And if not, how might you change your approach and move more towards one or more of those areas of focus?
Finally, before we go, Jonathan and I have found that the most helpful thing we can do to end these sessions is to help you begin your own conversations with other parents and your children about these topics right now in real time. So we've created this set of digital postcards to send to your friends and to your own kids, which provide prompt questions to jumpstart your discussions. As we go through them together, we'd love for you to screenshot or take pictures of any of the ones that strike you and then text or email them to people you know. You are also welcome to post them on social media. Our hope is that you'll use them as a way to open up dialogue and remind yourself of some of the key points that we've discussed. In our experience, this final activity becomes a way to make sure these conversations don't end tonight, but actually begin. So we'll pause for a moment while you pull out your phone or snap pictures of your screen, or feel free to use this QR code to pull up today's slides and screenshot them if you prefer.
The slide that we began with, which was the postcard from the Kevin Honeycutt quote, is one of a number that we also have in the slideshow. We won't be showing those on screen this evening, but you're welcome to scan all the way to the bottom. And there are about a dozen quotes from various people in the field that might be good conversation starters as well. So these that you'll see are tips, sort of suggestions for conversation, and those are other thinkers kind of expressing their thoughts about tech use and how it might shift if we were to give it a different kind of attention.
Digital leadership. How might we help our kids focus their tech use time on improving the lives, well-being, and circumstances of others?
Digital creation. How might we help our kids focus their tech use time on creating and not consuming media?
Behavioral architecture. How might we create digital and analog reminders to redirect our behavior?
What could be a tech-free space or time? What about our car, meals, a time of day, or a day of the week?
Support. Who can we reach out to for support as we begin focusing on digital leadership?
Weaponization. How do we feel, and how do our kids feel, knowing that the tech they use is being wielded against them?
Tech and mental health. How might we help our kids learn about tech's impact on their mental health?
Empowerment. How might we encourage our kids to take the lead in a campaign for healthy tech use?
One ring to rule them all. How might things change if we all followed one set of rules about technology?
And finally, step one. What's the first thing we could or should do to get these conversations started with our kids? We really appreciate all of you joining us this evening. As I mentioned, the next series of slides are quotes that look like this, all different individuals who have points of view about this that might be good places to start the conversation. But we'd welcome any comments you have in the chat and are happy to answer those. And then I can stick around for a bit if there are other questions that continue, or if that's everything we need, we can wrap ourselves up around 7 o'clock.
And please use the question and answer feature if you do have questions.
I apologize. I said chat and I meant Q&A.
Thank you so much, Kate and Jonathan.
Really appreciate being here. Thank you.
We'll pause for a few moments to see if folks have questions. And I'm also going to put the feedback form in the chat.
As Courtney said, the goal there is to help direct future programming. So we really do appreciate your feedback about how we can help provide additional information or additional areas of focus that would be useful.
I'm seeing some comments in the chat, but no questions right at the moment. So if you do have a question, feel free to add that. This session also has been recorded and will be posted in the next several days on the Portland Public Schools Parent University website.
I think it's worth reading the comments so that everybody can hear what other people have said. So this was incredibly helpful and thought-provoking, really makes me pause and examine my own use of technology and how I might set a better example for my kiddos. Thank you so much. I'm feeling more empowered, able to move from paralyzed and bewildered to proactive and more confident. Keep them coming.
Thank you so much. It really means a lot to both of us. I'll say that one of the most poignant things I've had happen in this experience with kids is a girl, I believe 5th grade or so, brought me what looked like a mouse trap. And I said, wow, what is that? Because I ran the makerspace at Cape Elizabeth Middle School. And she said, it's a cage for my dad's phone. And I thought, that's hilarious and so sad at the same time. And it prompted a really great conversation. Her dad actually later reached out and said that it had been really thought-provoking. And that research we know shows that parental use has the greatest influence on kids' use. It's staggering to see, and it's really impressive to see how transformative it can be to use something like the family tech agreement that Common Sense uses, or even just that conversation starter about what do we value at the table? What do we value in the car as time, and how are we going to shift that focus. It does not need to be monumental. It's those incremental changes that really can begin to make huge differences.
There's a question from Marie here from MANA. MANA is Maine Association for New Americans. Would a timer clock container be a good way to monitor screen time for kids? Thank you for all the information you've shared.
Sorry, I'm just going to read the question to make sure I understood it. A timer, is that what it said, or lock?
A timer lock container.
Okay, so that's actually what I just described was based on. There is a thing you can purchase to do this. My sense, and Kate and I have talked about this being sort of a different approach, is to come up with ways that the behavior architecture is more intentional and less punitive. So that, for example, if everyone is charging, I joke with students that I know it will come as a surprise, but there are plugs in their kitchen as well as in their bedroom. And that if they think about it as a chance to have a discussion, it's often a more helpful approach. The other piece of that can be really powerful is for everyone to put it in a device like that. So frequently people call these parking lots. Kate had an experience at her school where one of the teachers did this during a class period. And he, who was not a particularly enthusiastic participant in our group, he was very sort of even-keeled, came back and said, "You will not believe, it was so transformative." So they had this conversation. They all, including the teacher, put their device in a kind of parking lot. And that discussion was what was transformative. So yes, certainly they can have great value in helping serve as a reminder, but it's really the conversation about why they're going in there that can be even more powerful.
Someone said she very much appreciates emphasis on empathy in having these conversations with our children. I have unfortunately often taken more of a frustrated and judgmental approach, which is not working well.
It's so easy to do, though, right? They're ignoring me. I try to think about it as the other way around. They're not ignoring me. They're hypnotized, right? They're completely transfixed. And I, by saying, like, it's time for dinner, I'm trying to be more exciting than a room full of people whose job it is to distract the kid, right? And it's a really, I have a 22, a 19, and a 17-year-old. And so over the last decade or so, I've watched this evolution. And for me to develop the empathy has been the single most transformative aspect of how my wife and I parent and how really our whole family interacts with tech. Because I was as guilty, if not more so, than anyone else in the family of overuse and really falling prey to all the kind of techniques that are used to stimulate and release dopamine and just make you want to keep looking at your phone. It's a really remarkable journey to take. And if you dive into it with the same sense of kind of wonder, I guess I would say, that you can for other areas of exploration, it really is a neat thing to do with your kids as opposed to them. Courtney, did you just see that there's a question about the link?
Yes, I did see that. Grace, would you be able to open the form and change that so that anyone with the link could fill it out?
Oh, Colby, are you still there? Is that the form? Let me try.
Thank you. I see another question here from Kate. Would the district consider helping set up parent circles of support? Could PTOs be a way to stand up circles of support? And so I would look to Grace to help answer that question. I know that Jonathan, as MLTI ambassador, has been willing to join school communities for these types of parent nights.
Absolutely. That's a brilliant idea. We need that, Kate. Well, you can lead that as a leader at Lincoln Middle School and Deering High School.
The librarians I met with included some people who are very involved in the parent organizations, and each of them was very excited about launching some work in that area. I'm delighted to be able to support that. And as I said, I'm just over in Stroudwater, so I can physically get there quite easily. The catapult that I designed to get Kate here from MDI is not working just yet. So unfortunately, I will be your only in-person individual at the moment. But we do have one ambassador who is a Portland employee, and he will be able to join us for some of those as well. So we should be able to offer some really great support in that area.
Colby, are you still listening? I just seems like I don't own this form. So this is.
I know Kate has to get to another meeting, so I'm going to let her jump out, but I'm happy to stay and answer any other questions that come up. Ms. Meyer, it's delightful to see you as always. Have a lovely evening.
Kate, thank you so much for your time and for joining PPS this evening.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. It was so nice to chat with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Courtney, I'm wondering if in the email that includes the recording, perhaps they could also include the link to the slides and the feedback form.
Yes.
So people know that they're going to get it via email.
Yes. I'm unsure if we have been able to gather emails, however, from the Zoom participants.
Yeah, we did not do that.
What we could do is add a link to the form in the PPS website for Parent University for people to come back to later and fill out the form.
Yes, I think that's what we'll do. I don't own the form, so I can't give the permission. I can't open it.
If you keep the tab open, parents, and refresh it, as soon as Colby's able to switch it, it will allow you in. Of course, you may not be able to do that, but that is an option. The link won't change. It'll just, the permissions on the other side will change. And then when you refresh, it'll let you go in. Having made this misstep on more than one occasion in my life, I've learned a number of workarounds.
And the website for the Parent University is parentu.portlandschools.org. I can put that in the chat so that people can navigate there at another time and fill out the form. We still do have the Q&A open if other folks have questions.
I think we're good. So we'll just send it to folks, and we'll figure that out when we send a reminder to parents. And that's unfortunate that we couldn't give all the information. I should have gotten the names of the folks. Some folks, I have their email.
I think aside from the form and folks wanting to fill out the form, which we'll put on the website, or as Jonathan suggested, you could open up the form, and once that is permission is shared, could refresh and fill it out. I think aside from that, we have come to the end of what our questions are. So thank you, everyone, for joining this evening. And Jonathan, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was fabulous. Thank you so much. Thank you, Courtney, for spearheading this work. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye now.